Hello, folks. It's Mitch Boyle, Triple Double Sports Cards at tripledouble-sportscards.com. And when last we spoke, it was Steve Hart, President and CEO of BBCE, who walked me through the authentication of our 1986-87 Fleer basketball box. And it didn't go without a lot of due process, meaning there's a lot of dots to connect, including the fact that we ended up with 2 extra packs. Now, how did that happen? You're going to have to watch that video. But thanks so much for all the additional people that subscribed and the crazy comments we had, because they were left, right field, and right down the middle. The one that seemed to be in the majority was, hey, Mitch, open the damn packs. I think everybody wants to see that video. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, here's part 3 of the 4-part series, and Steve talks about what is going on today with the business. He also talks about 2 crazy wins at the end that he had, one with baseball, one with basketball, and then one that didn't turn out so good in basketball terms. So I hope you enjoy this. Thanks so much for watching. What do you love best about what you're doing today versus anything else? When you wake up in the morning and go, oh man, I'm glad I get to do blank.
I still enjoy actually working with the cards, the vintage cards. I enjoy most of the pre-70 stuff. So like I have a buyer, Phil, who travels the country and does nothing but buys. When he gives me that phone call that says, hey, I just bought a run of sets from 1953 on up, I just can't wait for him to get back in the office. I can't wait to dig into those binders and see what we have and the conditions and actually handle the cards. That's the part I still enjoy.
Give me an example of something in the last 6 months where you ran into it and you went, and you don't have to name names or anything, but you ran into something that was worth a fair amount that was like really eye-opening.
One of the finds earlier this year was I got a phone call from a card guy in Tampa, and he said he had a handful of 1971 Topps unopened wax boxes, baseball. Now, that's a very difficult box. I bought 10 of them about 15 years ago in an auction, and those were about the only 10 I've seen surface in the last 15 years. Because, I sold them all back then, so every once in a while when one pops back up, it was usually from that time I bought those. Those boxes just don't appear. So when this guy told me he had a handful of them, I was in Tampa immediately and bought them all. And, those were exciting.
Well, I would think, and I don't know what the rookies were, and obviously the relative rarity is probably a huge thing there, but what would a box like that be worth if it's authenticated today?
We sold them at the National on the first day, anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 a box.
Now, given all the unopened stuff you have and how big the National was this year, this is an obvious question, so maybe you can give me some detail. How big was your booth? How popular was it?
Boy. It was big. I mean, it's one of the biggest ones there. It's 50 by 50. And we fill it up with, unopened stuff that this year was really special because I had 2 years to kind of salt away some nice pieces because we didn't have the National last year. Usually I'll salt away some nice pieces that I find for the National. Well, this year I had 2 years worth of nice pieces I salted away. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could say much myself, but there are a lot of people who tell me that when the doors open Wednesday at 5, that they're running to my booth to try to be the first person to get crack at what we've got.
So that's a segue to the next obvious question, and is where do you think and everything is obviously quite popular right now, but in the world of sports card collecting, how do you feel about unopened in that world now and where it's headed?
I've told a lot of people this, but for, I'd say, 7 years in a row there, from probably 2013 to 2020, I would do an interview every year at the National. And I would say unopened cannot go any higher. It's reached its peak. And I was wrong 7 years in a row. So finally last year they asked me, well, what's going to happen to the unopened now? And I says, well, I think the 80s stuff is ready for a big jump. And that's what happened next. I says, 70s stuff is getting too difficult to find and too expensive for the average collector. I said, so that's going to creep into the 80s because it's still affordable. And for once I was right. The 80s stuff blew up that next year. I did a podcast earlier this year and somebody asked me about the growth I've seen since I've started doing this. And, starting in 1990 up until about 2020, I saw incremental growth. Let's say comparing it to the stock market, 6% here and 4% a year, and you'd lose 3%, and then a good year, 10%. Well, the growth that I saw in 30 years all happened in February and March of this year. Now it's coming back to a little bit more real. Things are still crazy, but have come down a little bit from that peak in February and March.
So staying with your company and all the growth that's going on and kind of you trying to keep things together because no one could ever imagine that this is going on. How do you see your company over the next 10 to 15 years? Is your goal to sell it to somebody else, keep it with the family? It sounds like maybe either your daughter or your son or whatever.
I don't know. For 31 years now, I come into work every day and we go to war. I hate saying things like that because my dad was in the Vietnam War, and this is nothing like war. It's just an expression. We come into work every day and we go to war. We do our best every day here as hard as we can.
Yeah.
And after 31 years, I'm realizing I can't do that forever.
Yeah. The intensity
it's become a lot. It's become too much at times.
Yeah. Especially when
it affects your health, your mental health. And so I've got to make some decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere right away.
No, but it sounds like when we were talking earlier, you had some ideas relative to getting some help or, the core things that you do that from a consumer standpoint probably is the most value that we see anyway. I mean, obviously the people who are shipping things and coordinating the accounting side are just as valuable as anybody else. Tell me about one of your best basketball transactions. I know that you had something to do with some 86, 87, but maybe there's something else that's more interesting or more recent you want to talk about.
Kind of interesting is there's been 3 86, 87 Fleer basketball fines. Several years ago, I got a call out of someone in upstate New York, I think, who still had a case with 7 boxes in it untouched. And I really don't think he had any idea what they were worth until his grandson or somebody asked him to go to a card show to buy some Pokemon. And he got to the card show and he saw a box and he says, I've got one of those. And of course the dealer's like, yeah, right. Yeah. I got 7 of those. Yeah, whatever. You should probably give Steve a call. Well, we ended up getting out there and spending several $100,000 and buying them. A few years later, somebody in Jefferson City, Oklahoma called us. And ironically, they had 7 boxes. They all still had 40-cent price tag stickers on them, too. He worked at a grocery store and bought them all for 40 cents and just threw them in the closet. So we gave him several $100,000 for them. And then last March, right before the country shut down, a guy walked in here with 7 boxes. He bought out one of those storage lockers, like you see on TV for X amount of money. And there was a partial case in there with exactly 7 boxes. So there's been 3 fines of 86 Fleer basketball probably in the last 8 years. And each time it was a 7-box lot.
And each time it went through you, has anybody else had any fine?
The third 7-box lot, I couldn't buy. I tried to, but I did authenticate them. And then they went to auction.
Oh, okay. Meaning that, and by the way, it was interesting in our transaction, you walked me through what was going to happen, but you never once said, hey, I'll make a deal with you. It always felt like you're there to help me get the most value for what I have and guide me to the path that will be most profitable. So thank you.
I've always felt, sometimes people, bring up the whole conflict of interest thing that not only do I authenticate it, but it's also my business.
Yeah.
And I kind of try to keep it a little separate. You send me your box and my whole job is to authenticate it for you, wrap it, charge you. And now you can make more money, or if you're a collector, you could feel a lot happier and secure. But I usually do not bring up, hey, what you want for it?
Yeah.
Usually I'll just do the authentication, the wrapping, and ship it back to you.
Yeah.
If it goes to the point, then some people will say, well, hey, I want to sell it. Now I'll take a different approach to it.
Yeah.
But I usually will not start out trying to buy it or having anything to do with it on my end of owning it.
Tell me about something that happened in the last maybe year or two where it was a mistake, meaning I had a chance to do this and it didn't happen. And boy, that's a big regret.
As far as what, buying something or? Well, I've got a good one. Okay, I've got a good one for you. Last March, if you remember, I think the NBA shut down. I had a bunch of unopened cases of Prism with Mahomes rookie. Prism with Doncic rookies,
Oh my
collect
God.
Mahomes cases. 2 days before the league shut down, I decided to sell all my cases of these guys. Well, it was because I said these things can't go any higher. And I think I sold all the cases of those, great items for about $100,000. 2 days later, the NBA shut down and the stuff plummeted. And I says, I'm the smartest man in the world. I am a genius. Of course, it was just timing. That was luck. Well, then our industry went crazy. And if I still had those cases today, I probably left $800,000 on the table.
Wow.
So, at first I said, boy, I'm a genius. Somehow I predicted that our country was going to shut down. Of course, I had no idea. Sold the cases, got paid, and I said, boy, that was the best timing I ever did in my life.
Yeah. And
Turns out everything went the other direction.
gosh, yeah, especially when you talk about Mahomes and
Yeah,
Luka.
I think I sold Prism Mahomes case for $10,000, and today they're $100. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, last question about your business. What's the most important thing collectors or investors should know that you're surprised how often they don't?
Do not buy unopened stuff off eBay, ever.
Unless it's graded.
Unless I've looked at it, or it's a very reputable dealer, or I'm not saying everybody on there's a crook,
Right.
but if you buy 10 unopened wax boxes of, say, late 70s, early 80s, 8, 9 of them are going to be resealed garbage, unless you know the seller and you're very comfortable with the seller. You've got to do your homework.
Yeah.
It's kind of like buying autographs on eBay. You might as well just throw your money down the toilet.
So that leads to a question that I've wondered about in terms of getting this graded and why anybody would, because I haven't. And that is, it's the cello packs that I have. I have 89, 90 rack packs.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, okay, you already know what's on the front and the back, so it's not like it can't be searched, if you will.
Right.
So why would you get that authenticated?
I've been wondering that myself. I mean, we, believe it or not, we get a ton of rack packs, 88, 89, 90, 91, where they're probably worth $2 or $3 on a good day. And so it surprises me. But then I think about all the cards PSA gets that are worth $1 or $2, and people are willing to pay 10, 15. Maybe it's collectors. I do notice a lot of times we'll get a stack of 20, 88, 89 racks.
Yep.
They'll all have Cubs on top. So then I understand that's obviously a Cubs collector. Or they all have Hall of Famers on top. Somebody's just collecting. So usually when those type of packs get authenticated, most of the time it ends up in a collector's hands.
So great feedback and some wild stories from Steve. I love what he said about how the category of what he's so passionate about is still going through and opening up what it is that he actually ends up having to authenticate. That was really interesting. Part 4, what's that going to be about? Of course, it's going to be about the future. Steve has some pretty distinct opinions about what is going on in our industry, some of the new categories, some of the new options, some of the things that he thinks should stay the same and not change, and some of the business-related issues that we've had and how we need to work through that, or at least some ideas about how he feels about it. So I think you'll enjoy part 4. That's it for today. I want to say thanks so much for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. I love to get the comments. If you have anything to ask of me or Steve, I would appreciate that. I'm Mitch Boyle, Triple Double Sports Cards at tripledouble-sportscards.com.
I saw you through the window just the other day, a model of the perfect girl on display. For reasons that I can't ever explain, again, I'm falling for somebody's volunteer. Everybody's volunteer.